You and your mother get the 70 square foot storage room. My husband, who got stuck between a rock and a hard place living in my parents' home, had an outburst right after we finished renovating. My husband snapped. He started saying he would kick me and my mother out and live with his own mother in my parents' house, which was remodeled to look exactly like our new house. I was shaking with anger as I realized my parents' house, filled with memories of my late father, had been taken over. My name is Lisa Matthews, and I turned 33 this year. I've been married to my husband, Thomas, for 8 years. We both work and live with my mother at my parents' house. It's okay because our jobs are very close by. It was a sort of curveball situation, you know. My father passed away before I got married. I was hesitant to leave my mother alone to get married, but my husband said, "If you're worried about leaving your mom alone, let's live together." I was really happy when he agreed to live in the home my father built for us. Although it is an old home, it's a home filled with memories for my mother and I. My husband is the youngest of 3 brothers, and my mother-in-law seemed to have spoiled her eldest son a lot. My husband often complained about the vast difference in treatment between him and his eldest brother. Because of his lightweight position as the youngest child, he was able to make the decision to live at my parents' house. I made up my mind to marry him after hearing these words. However, there was one person who was against my husband living in my family home. It was my husband's mother, my mother-in-law. Perhaps she felt as if her own son had been stolen. The eldest son and his wife live in my husband's family home, so it would be difficult for us to live there, even if we wanted to. As we were saving for our own home, I convinced my mother-in-law that it would be best for us to start our married life at my parents' house without paying rent. Although I had heard that my mother-in-law had always favored her eldest son, she suddenly started to show concern for my husband around this time. I didn't think we'd have this much trouble over my husband moving out of his family home, but our relationship with my mother-in-law remained strained after our marriage because of this issue. Lately, my husband has become very concerned about his mother. It might be because she suddenly started to treat him with affection after our engagement was decided. Maybe he's happy to get attention from his mother, but my husband has started to prioritize her over everything. Above all, he also starts to get furious if I don't think of my mother-in-law first. I've never neglected my mother-in-law, and I've been trying to be nice to her. However, according to my husband, I am treating my own biological mother better than my mother-in-law. Of course, we don't talk about such things in front of my mother. When we were alone together, it had become a habit for him to whine and complain. Because my husband keeps telling me to pay more attention to my mother-in-law, I try to visit her house frequently, even though I always bring her favorite gifts and make sure to let her know before I go. She is often not at home. I could feel that she was obviously avoiding me, but I had no choice but to go because I knew that if I didn't, my mother-in-law would complain to my husband that I never visit or bring her anything. Every time my sister-in-law, the wife of the oldest brother, apologizes and hands over the gifts to my mother-in-law. She also seemed to be receiving a lot of criticism from our mother-in-law, and she said, "It's tough on both of us. We're the same age and we get along really well." I thought that my mother-in-law's attitude would soften as the years went by, even though things had been strained at first as newlyweds. But I was very wrong. Even after 8 years of marriage, her attitude has not changed at all. A lot has changed over the 8 years since we got married. My father-in-law passed away, and twins were born to the eldest son and his wife. There have been various changes in our family. The house of my in-laws is particularly lively now. The eldest son and his wife have many children, and with the recent birth of the twins, they now have 5 children. Moreover, all of them were boys. Because of the excessive liveliness, my mother-in-law seemed overwhelmed, and my husband asked me if we could take care of my mother-in-law in our house for a little while. Actually, my brother-in-law told my husband that his wife was having a hard time, and he wanted their mother to do some housework. But my brother-in-law's wife told me that our mother-in-law didn't want to do any of it, and could she stay at our house instead? Although we had an extra room, the house was terribly old. I proposed to my husband that if my mother-in-law was going to live with us temporarily, we might need to renovate the house. My husband seemed to think I would object to keeping my mother-in-law, and he looked surprised at my reaction. I wasn't really keen on the idea myself, but I agreed in hopes that my brother-in-law's wife would have a break. My husband works for a construction company, and renovations are his expertise. It can be sure that my husband will take care of everything. I'll leave it to you because you're the expert. I said so and decided to renovate this house. My mother is getting old, so it was a good opportunity to consider making the house accessible by removing the steps and installing the handrails. During the renovation, my mother and I stayed at my sister's house, and my husband stayed temporarily in a weekly rental apartment with my mother-in-law. But the incident happened on the day when the renovation was completed. Up to this point, I had believed that the house was being transformed into a comfortable home. I was looking around the house under my husband's guidance. There are no steps and handrails in various places, making it possible to live in the house for a long time, even when one gets old. My husband had cleverly made a hobby room for himself. I decided to accept it. Since he is a contributor to the renovation, let's at least give him credit for that. After being shown all the rooms, I suddenly realized there were no rooms for my mother and I. The room my mother used to use was now my mother-in-law's room. Where's Mom's room? You haven't shown it to me yet. I didn't care about my own room, but it was strange that there was no room for my mother. I just showed you, my husband said, laughing. I had a bad feeling about this. Huh? You haven't shown me yet. You and your mom get the 70 square foot storage room, my husband replied. I couldn't believe my ears. Indeed, I was shown the 70 square foot storage room earlier. It was the place in the house that received the least sunlight. A dark storage room with only a small window. Are you joking? Don't say stupid things, I retorted. My mother-in-law intervened between my husband and I. It's been 8 years since you became my daughter-in-law, but you still haven't learned how to behave as a wife. You're not qualified to be a wife if you're going to bite back at your husband. This house was beautifully rebuilt by Thomas. If you don't like that room, why don't you get a divorce and leave? She spat out. The word divorce suddenly flashed in front of me, and I lost my patience, my blood rushing to my head. Thinking that I wouldn't dare to divorce, my husband was laughing. At that moment, all the affection built up over 8 years of marriage flew away. I see. This was your plan from the beginning. If you don't like the 70 square foot storage room, why don't you put your mom in a facility? There's no room anyway. It must be hard for you to have 2 mothers under the same roof. I glared at my husband, who dared to say such a thing. Come to think of it, my brother-in-law's wife told me. Since the renovation was decided, my husband and mother-in-law were always stuck together and talking about something. My husband, having never indulged before, was now behaving like a child towards his mother, doting on her in front of my brother-in-law and his children. Ever since the renovation was decided, my mother-in-law was thrilled to have a new house and a quiet environment, and my husband was eagerly waiting to live with his beloved mother. Seeing the 2 of them attached at the hip and grinning, I started to feel sick. I took my stunned mother's arm and, making loud footsteps, walked out the front door. I deliberately stomped on the hallway as I walked, thinking at least it might do some damage. My mother followed me, bewildered, as we left our family home. The triumphant laughter of my husband and mother-in-law echoed from behind us. I couldn't forgive my husband's betrayal after living together as a couple for 8 years. All I could think about was getting revenge. When we finally returned to my sister's house, we were so overwhelmed we just collapsed. It was all too much to even put into words. My mother was still in shock. "Do you think they've taken over our house?" she muttered after taking a sip of the tea my sister had made. Her words were like a punch in the gut. This was the result of me agreeing to the renovation my husband suggested and leaving everything to him. "We have to reclaim our house, our home, filled with so many memories. The house that Dad built for us," she whispered. I squeezed her hand tightly. Half measures were not enough for me. "We can't just sit back and do nothing. We're going to fight this head on." My mother looked up at me. "What are we going to do?" "I have a plan." I revealed my plan to my mother. She looked a bit surprised, but nodded in agreement. "If it's your idea, Lisa, I won't oppose it." With that one sentence from my mother, our counterattack against my husband and mother-in-law began. A few days later, I saw a moving truck parked near our family home. From afar, I could see my mother-in-law directing my husband to bring in her belongings. Judging from the amount of luggage, it was clear that she intended to move in for good, not just temporarily. My mother-in-law didn't lift a finger, just gave instructions to my husband. He happily helped her with the move. Seeing his face made my anger towards them grow even more. After checking the situation at my family home, I visited our lawyer with a real estate agent. I thought it was the only way to counter my husband's betrayal. I explained to the lawyer everything that had happened after the renovation and how my husband and mother-in-law had taken over our house. At first, he was shocked. But after hearing about my husband's terrible behavior, he shared our anger. And so we were able to secure the full cooperation of both the lawyer and the real estate agent. A week after my husband and mother-in-law had taken over my family home, I visited again. When I rang the doorbell, my cheerful mother-in-law appeared. "Hello, who's there? Oh, it's you." Her face soured as soon as she saw me. "I have something important to discuss today. I'm coming in." "Oh, I'm sorry. You're acting as if you were the owner of this house. It's easy to forget that it's actually my house," I said sarcastically and walked straight into the house. The house, having been renovated and filled with new furniture and appliances, was no longer the family home I remembered. It felt as if my childhood memories had been completely wiped away. My husband was relaxing in the living room at the back. Like my mother-in-law, he looked displeased at the sight of me and said, "What's up with you barging into people's houses like that?" "You. Long time no see. I have something important to discuss today." I had my lawyer present as well, and I faced my husband across the table. "What's up? You decided to live in a tiny studio apartment? Got a mover for just one guy? Not much stuff you can fit in a studio apartment, huh?" he mocked. I was pissed off at my husband's attitude, but I had decided to remain calm today. No matter what, I was bound to win this. There was no need to rush anything. Before jumping to conclusions, there's something I want to ask you. Why had he renovated my family home into such a state and driven us out? I wanted to confirm his true intentions. I thought we had been living as a happily married couple with no major disputes since our marriage. I was sure his relationship with my mother was also good. I don't understand why my husband's attitude changed so drastically. Even if he was instigated by my mother-in-law, what he did was too bold. At my question, my husband let out a big sigh as if it were troublesome. Then he showed a sneering smile again. "I got tired of it all. Living like a dutiful husband, being considerate to you and your mother. I've been patient for a long time. I want to live with my mother. I don't need anything else. I was taken aback at my husband, who half shouted. I was speechless at the realization that he was just a mama's boy. Unable to say anything, I listened to my husband start to spill all the frustrations he had been holding back. He was frustrated that he couldn't live with his mother and embarrassed that as a man he was living in his wife's house. It felt like I had been deceived. He endured it all on his own, got angry on his own, and even plotted to take over my family home. I began to suspect he might be a psychopath. If you have that much dissatisfaction, you should have just told me. How can I possibly express dissatisfaction? I'm a man. You should understand. Even his final assertion was utterly ridiculous. My mother-in-law was teary-eyed as she listened to my husband's argument. I thought that this was the result of her nurturing her eldest son with excessive affection, but it didn't seem like she thought so. She just seemed to pity her son, who adored her. Being subjected to this cheap soap opera, I sighed heavily, unable to bear the ridiculousness. It seemed that my husband was offended by my attitude and raised his voice. What's with that attitude? You should be grateful that I even prepared a small studio room for you. I could have taken away your room too. With his face turned red, my husband looked like a tantrum-throwing child. That's right. Keep a room for a useless daughter-in-law. What a kind son you are. I'm happy to be praised by you. To quickly end this farce, I presented my husband with the divorce papers. Of course, already signed by me. Please divorce me. I don't want to stay married after being treated like this. Then I showed him the registration of the house, explaining that it was one of the properties I had inherited from my father and it was under my name. Looking at the documents, my husband seemed to realize something. I won't divorce. I did the renovation. Even if the property is under your name, it should be considered as both of ours. I will absolutely not divorce. It seemed my husband realized that if we divorced, he would be kicked out of this house. Even if you don't want to divorce, what made you think you could stay here? The house is in my name. It's my property, so I've sold it. I spread out another document before my husband, a sales contract for the land and house. Both he and my mother-in-law leaned in to check the names and dates on the paper. Since this house is already sold, you'll need to move out promptly. We have potential buyers, so you should leave by today or tomorrow. With a smile, I told the two of them. Their faces turned pale. Whether you divorce or not, you cannot live in this house. I don't want to see your faces anymore, so I want you to divorce. Hold on. Why? Wasn't this your house? My mother-in-law had mistakenly thought that the house belonged to my husband. He probably hadn't expected me to take such drastic measures. He seemed to have assumed that I would accept some kind of compromise and forgive him. But I'm not that naive, and my love for my husband has cooled. I don't have a shred of mercy left. Please discuss the details with my lawyer. Don't come directly to me. If we are kicked out of this house, where will we? Yeah, we thought we finally found a place where we could peacefully spend our retirement, and a maid. My mother-in-law seemed to have thought of my mother and me as maids rather than family. Feeling it wasn't good for my mental health to talk to these people anymore, I suggested, why don't you go back to your family home and live with your eldest son and his wife? Oh, but since you made such a fuss about leaving, your older brother might be angry and not let you in. Leaving those words behind, I quickly left my family home. My family home filled with so many memories. I hesitated to sell it. But after being so disrespected, I couldn't back down. The truth is, my childhood home had already drastically changed. I don't think my decision was wrong. 3 days later, my husband and mother-in-law hastily left my family home. I didn't want to keep the house after it had been remodeled so recklessly, so I had it demolished and put the land up for sale. Looking at the empty plot where nothing was left, I felt a mix of emptiness, relief, and a complicated array of other emotions. After that, my husband and mother-in-law moved back to their family home for a while, seemingly treated as nuisances by my older brother and his wife. My husband, who had been reluctant to divorce until the end, seemed to have realized my feelings had completely cooled when I left all negotiations to my lawyer. My lawyer said he signed the divorce papers while crying at the end. Eventually, my husband seemed to be despairing of his mother, who had started to flatter my older brother more than him. Just when he thought he had finally become his mother's number one, it turned out to be a short-lived victory. It seems that my mother-in-law was ultimately disowned by my older brother and his wife. My husband and mother-in-law started living together in a small apartment near their workplace. My husband, who had never really lived alone, seemed to be struggling, and my mother-in-law, despite complaining about her son's low earnings, had to do all the housework again, complaining every day. My husband contacts me almost every week, asking for reconciliation because living with my mother-in-law is too hard, but I ignore all his messages. Even after everything that happened, my husband, who still thinks we can reconcile, is really a fool. I have no intention of remarrying, and I've built a small new house on the small plot of land left by my father, where I live with my mother. It's a small, single-story house because it's just the two of us, but it's filled with things that my mother and I love. I'm still working, so I have no financial worries. My mother, who was shocked by the loss of our old home, is gradually regaining her energy. Even though we're now strangers, my sister-in-law from my older brother's family brings her children over to play at our new house. She treats us the same after the divorce, and I'm truly grateful. Our new life with my mother has just begun. My mother and I laughed, promising to enjoy whatever comes next.
It's the honest truth. Even your father-in-law must have heard about your blunders, right? It's downright unbearable. Sharing a meal with a poor woman who grew up in a single mother household like you? It's preposterous. You come from a different world than us. Please, just leave and wait outside. Understood. I'll leave. I politely said goodbye to the Johnson family and tried to leave. My name is Mary Johnson. I'm a 24-year-old working at Johnson Enterprises. As a secretary to the CEO, I've been employed here for about 2 years. I was actually invited to join the company by the CEO, Ronald Johnson, while I was still in college. We were in the same business class and ended up becoming good friends because our seats were side by side. Ronald is 30 years old, and we met when he was 24. He had already graduated from a 4-year college, but he was attending college again to deepen his knowledge as a business owner, it seems. He is quite the scholar. His father is the chairman of the Johnson Group. During his university years, Ronald took over his father's will and served as the president of Johnson Group Trading. He became an elite at a young age by becoming a president. My family, on the other hand, was extremely poor. My father was a gambling addict and a hopeless casino fanatic. The debts he incurred led to my parents' divorce when I was in elementary school. My mother raised me single-handedly. I want to somehow help my mother who has been struggling. With that feeling, I kept working hard at my studies. And then, Ronald, who learned about my situation, invited me to join his company, Johnson Trading. 2 years have passed since I joined the company and started working as Ronald's secretary. I have acquired secretarial and business document skills certification and am working hard for Ronald. By the way, Ronald Johnson, the president, is also my husband. Originally, I was interested in him during my university years and started dating after joining Johnson Trading. After a year of dating, I got married to Ronald. Ronald is a kind husband who, despite being a president, never acts arrogant and always takes care of me. I feel extreme happiness being able to be with him both at work and at home. I truly believe it was great that I met Ronald. Then came a certain day. A transfer notice was announced at Johnson Trading, and I couldn't hide my surprise at the name. The appointment of a vice president, and that name was Julia Johnson. I inadvertently frowned at the sight of the new vice president's name. I couldn't believe that the person I was not comfortable with was becoming vice president. This Julia Johnson is the wife of Ronald's brother, Billy Johnson. The reason she was promoted to vice president is because she has a proven track record of reviving companies in the Johnson Group. The performance of Johnson Trading has been declining year by year. Originally dealing mainly in food and clothing, the recent epidemic has resulted in a decline in sales. Ronald was in a frenzy, trying to recover the performance, but to no avail. Hence, the competent Julia Johnson was appointed as vice president. In other words, she is my sister-in-law. Why am I uncomfortable with this person? The reason goes back 1 year. I first met Julia at the wedding reception when Ronald and I got married. She was a very beautiful and cute woman, but when I greeted her, she just said, I got a really bad impression. Did I do something? When I tried to start a conversation with Julia, where are you from? Where am I from? I'm from Cincinnati. The moment she clicked her tongue. Do you not understand what I mean? I'm asking about your social status, not where you're from. Surely, you're not just a commoner, are you? I couldn't make sense of my conversation with her, and all I could say was, I am an ordinary citizen. Then she just disappeared without a word. I haven't seen Julia since then. The much anticipated day of the internal personnel change, X Day, arrived. Julia was appointed as vice president, and Ronald and I went to the station to pick her up. I was nervous about seeing her again after a long time. I didn't know what to say, so all I could say was, Julia, nice to meet you. She just said, oh, it's been a while. Got into the limousine arranged by Ronald and headed straight to Johnson Trading. When Ronald and I entered the president's office, I heard words from him that made me doubt my ears. He wanted me to be Julia's secretary. When I asked why me, he said it was because Julia had requested it. Apparently, Ronald couldn't refuse because she was his brother's wife. I reluctantly accepted when he pleaded with me. The job is the same as the president's secretary, managing the schedule, assisting with tasks, and answering the vice president's phone calls. However, since the person was my brother-in-law's wife and an unknown entity, I found it hard to do. Still, I had to do it. In the afternoon, I entered the vice president's office where Julia was. I greeted her and tried to start a conversation in the hope of getting along with her a little bit. I'm so glad that you're the vice president, Julia. I look forward to working with you. I greeted with a smile, but she said, I don't care about that. Just tell me tomorrow's schedule. I was initially angry, but I held it in, apologized with, I'm sorry, and explained it to her with my notebook. What's with this arrogant attitude? But she is a member of the Johnson family. I didn't want to cause a big trouble, and didn't want to cause trouble to Ronald, so I decided to do my job while holding back. That day, Ronald came home to the apartment when I got home. When I went to greet him at the entrance, he said, What's wrong? You look pale. I just responded with, I'm fine. I couldn't tell him after all. One day, I made a grave mistake. I accidentally swapped Ronald and Julia's schedules and only realized this when I received a phone call from Julia. She stated that she had not scheduled the meeting that I had told her about. Looking at the schedule, I saw that I had relayed the details of the meeting meant for Ronald to Julia instead. I realized my mistake, but it was too late by then. I was rebuked by Julia saying, I apologized to the client, but they didn't forgive me, and we lost a hard-won deal worth $200,000 because of you. She also lamented about the fact that she had to put up with unwanted advances from the lecherous president of the company we were dealing with to secure the deal, all of which ended up being for naught due to my error. Upon hearing that, Julia returned to the office. I immediately went to the president's office. I walked in, and first thing, I apologized deeply. But Julia shouted back, Sorry isn't enough. Her face as red as a demon's. I was at a loss for words when Ronald stepped in. This time it's true that Mary is at fault, but there's nothing we can do about it now. Be careful next time. Ronald tried to mediate the situation, but Julia snidely remarked, She'll just make the same mistake again. This is why uneducated commoners are useless. Upon hearing this comment, I recognized my fault, but wondered what she meant by not having a decent education. It felt like my personality and life were being denied, which fueled my irritation. But the mistake was mine. Unable to retort, I stayed silent. Then Ronald intervened. That might be an overstatement. However, Julia turned away with a dismissive, After getting permission from Ronald to leave, I exited the president's office. I went to the company cafe to reflect, pondering why I made the mistake. Just then, Julia walked in. I rushed to her, saying, Julia, I'm sincerely sorry for what happened. I apologized without caring who was around. I'm forgiving you this time because the president asked me to. But don't think there will be a next time. I can fire a commoner like you anytime. This was the last straw. I understand and accept my mistake. But what does being a commoner have to do with anything? Excuse me, is being a commoner relevant here? What? Who are you to argue? If you had a proper education, you wouldn't have made such a mistake. Well, I think my mistake and my home environment are unrelated. Is there something against commoners? I inadvertently confronted Julia. She sighed as if exasperated and said, "Never mind." Then she walked away. A week later, Ronald, Julia, and I were set to attend the head office's executive meeting. We had a pre-meeting lunch as the meeting was scheduled in the afternoon. After thoroughly checking the topics and materials, I felt well prepared this time. As our meeting neared conclusion and Ronald left for the restroom, I also went to the restroom at that time. I felt nervous about attending the meeting with Julia, fearing more criticisms. I felt a salty taste as I sipped the water in my glass, but dismissed it as my imagination and finished the drink to quench my thirst. We joined the executive meeting at 3 p.m. The meeting progressed smoothly, but suddenly, I felt an urge to use the restroom. The feeling was so strong that I could hear my stomach rumbling. There was no way I could hold it in. Yet, I didn't have the courage to interrupt this solemn meeting by declaring, "Excuse me, restroom," and rushing out. Regardless of my reluctance, the urge to go kept tormenting me. "Ronald, everyone, I'm sorry." Before facing the deluge, the disaster, the guerrilla rainstorm, I'm sorry. I rushed out of the meeting room and into the restroom, where I stayed for nearly 30 minutes. Everything was over, and I opened the door and stepped outside. I was feeling incredibly unwell from dehydration and exhaustion. It seemed that the meeting was over too, and Ronald and Julia were sitting in the company cafe. Ronald was looking at me with concern, but Julia had a smirk on her face. That's when a suspicion crossed my mind. The water I had drunk earlier had a strong, salty taste. When I returned from the toilet and sat down, clutching my stomach, Ronald asked me if I was okay. But Julia just said, "Did you eat something weird and get food poisoning?" in a sarcastic tone. Could it be that she mixed a laxative in while I was gone? But why? Would she do something like that? Out of anger for the lost deal? I don't know, but I did have diarrhea after drinking that water. I found myself plunged in doubt and suspicion. Ronald told me, "Go home and rest today." So I decided to go home. The diarrhea was better, but my stomach hurt. I laid my head on the cafe table until I calmed down. After a while, the pain subsided and I decided to head home. But before that, I had to inform the vice president of tomorrow's schedule. I headed to the vice president's office and knocked on the door. When I did, I heard Julia's voice saying, "Come in." When I entered the room, she said, "Oh, it's you." Of course, she didn't bother asking about my health. "What do you want? Make it quick, I'm busy." "Julia, you put something in the water, didn't you?" At my question, Julia smirked and said, "What are you talking about?" Don't play dumb. At lunchtime, when Ronald and I left our seats, Didn't you mix something in my glass? Oh my, what a sudden accusation! It's completely unreasonable to blame others. Get out of here, you fool! Furthermore, I saw a box of laxatives on her desk. When Julia noticed my gaze, she said, "Well, I might as well tell you the truth. Yes, I mixed a drug into your glass." Why would you do such a thing? What did I ever do to you? Why have you been like this since we met? It's simple. Because you're a commoner, that's all. You're unnecessary to the Johnson family. Her flippant reason for considering me a commoner left me not just angry, but dumbfounded. And tears welled up in my eyes. Unfortunately, I'll have to fire you. No matter how much you tell the president about me, you have no evidence, so it's impossible. Plus, if you consult anyone, you'll be making an enemy of the Johnson family. A rift will form between my husband Billy and Ronald, and the brotherly relationship will become the worst because of you. If you're okay with that, feel free to consult. She was right. If I told Ronald, the Johnson family would be in turmoil. I had no choice but to endure in silence. Tears of frustration wouldn't stop, and I navigated through the blurry vision to head home. Ronald worried about my sobbing figure. I wanted to talk, but if I did, things would get serious. Ronald asked, "What happened? Is it about Julia?" He hit the nail on the head. After much hesitation, I said, "Actually, Julia..." I ended up talking about everything, the past events and the incidents at today's meeting. Once I started speaking, I couldn't stop, and I ended up speaking my mind. And then, I couldn't stay in the Johnson family anymore. But it was because of me that a major deal fell through. I was just a drag. "Ronald, I'm sorry. Let's get divorced. If I'm gone, you can stay good with Billy, with Julia. I'm an unnecessary person. Don't despair. I'm no good without Mary. I love Mary. I want you by my side every moment. That's why I made you my secretary. So please, don't leave me. Don't talk about such sad things like breaking up." One day, at the end of the year, Ronald asked me to come to a dinner party where the entire Johnson family would gather. Of course, Julia would be there. I decided to go to the dinner party. After all, it was an important event. And then I made up my mind and left the house. The staff greeted me and showed me the way. My in-laws, Billy, and Julia were already at the table. I greeted everyone. Of course, Julia acted sullenly with a It was an expected attitude. When Ronald and I sat down, Julia first said, "I feel sick. I really feel sick. Having dinner with this poor trash? It pollutes the atmosphere. It will spoil caviar we are going to have." At this statement, my father-in-law said, "What are you talking about?" in anger. "It's the truth. You must have heard about her gaffe too, right? It's so annoying. It's not a joke to have dinner with a commoner from a single mother household. You're from a different world. Just go out. It's better if you wait outside. Understood, then. I said bye to everyone in the Johnson family and was about to leave. I heard my father-in-law suddenly yell, "Then you should go home." What? What do you mean, father-in-law? No ifs or buts. You're the unnecessary one in the Johnson family. What are you talking about, father-in-law? I am the vice president of Johnson Corporation and Billy's wife. She seemed to want to argue, but my father-in-law shook his head and said, "It seems Billy wants to divorce you." At that word, Julia glared at Billy. Billy, is that true? Yes. I'm tired of your high-handed attitude that looks down on people, and you don't do any housework. You're good at your job, and there are parts I respect, but otherwise, you're done as a human being. You're the one who's in the way. What? Furthermore, it seems like my father-in-law had heard from Ronald about what Julia had done to me so far. The fact that Billy didn't like her, and about me. My father-in-law seemed to have planned to cut ties with Julia at this opportunity. That's what the dinner was for. Don't say such ridiculous things. After all, father-in-law, do you have any proof? The proof that I made Mary sick. At this time, I thought it was time for revenge. Everyone in the Johnson family is on my side. There's nothing to fear. I remembered on the spur of the moment and pulled out the pen I always stick in my chest. Then, Julia made a puzzled face and then laughed out loud. What are you thinking, showing such a thing? Her complacency will end now. Without any hesitation, I pressed the switch on the pen. Don't play dumb. Didn't you mix something into my glass when Ronald and I left our seats during lunch? When my voice played, Julia's face turned pale. Yes, this pen is not just a pen. It's a pen-type recorder. It's always recording to not forget the content of conversations at negotiations and meetings. Thinking that there might be something, I kept Julia's voice as evidence. And now was the perfect time to play it. Julia covered her face with both hands and was trembling. It's not over yet, Julia. You didn't really marry Billy out of love. You married him to expand the Lee Group's power, didn't you? What are you talking about? Then, Ronald took out his smartphone and started playing a certain voice recording. That poor woman is unnecessary to the Lee Group. Instead, I will incorporate the Johnson Group into the Lee Group eventually. Suddenly, Julia covered her face and screamed, Stop! I feel so... Was this her soliloquy? In doing so, my status will rise even higher. How secure! After that, a long conversation that seemed like Julia's monologue continued. Once I become the next president of Johnson Corporation, I can frequent high-end male strip clubs even more than now. And the recording also contained her calling out names of her favorite strippers, saying, I love you, and I adore you. Hearing this, Billy showed his anger. You're obsessed with strippers. Why did she feel embarrassed after the voice recording was played? The Lee Group that Julia mentioned is a rival of the Johnson Group. She originally was the daughter of the Lee Group. However, it was said that she had a love marriage with Billy. But that seemed to be different. She might have been forced into a political marriage as a spy for the Lee Group. You will divorce Billy and be dismissed as the vice president. Furthermore, we will completely withdraw from the Lee Group. We have been getting along through mutual encouragement, but this is a total break. Julia's face turned pale. Furthermore, the mother-in-law, who had been listening to the whole thing, opened her mouth. Julia, you called Mary a poor person and a commoner, but what I can't forgive the most is that you denied that she was raised in a single-parent family. I, too, was poor and raised in a single-parent family when I was young. You don't know the human heart. You're the one who's not needed. It was the first time I had seen the mother-in-law so angry. I was surprised, as she always gave me a gentle and smiling impression. Everyone's gaze gathered on Julia. She pounded the table with both hands and stood up vigorously. Remember this, the Lee Group will never forgive you. She spat out this parting shot and left the restaurant. Honestly, my heart felt very relieved. Everyone protected me. I no longer needed to leave the Johnson family. As I felt relieved, tears began to flow. Seeing this, Ronald and my parents-in-law and Billy all comforted me. 2 weeks after the dinner party, a call came from the chairman of the Lee Group. I remembered Julia's words. The Lee Group will never forgive you. However, the contents of the call were unexpected. I sincerely apologize for the tremendous inconvenience my daughter, Julia, has caused you. The chairman himself had made an apology call. Apparently, he had heard the detailed story from the chairman of the Johnson Group, my father-in-law, and when he asked Julia, she readily admitted to it. The Lee Group does not think about crushing the Johnson Group at all. This trouble is my responsibility as a parent. I am truly sorry. It turned out that everything had started from Julia's delusion. Moreover, the reason why Julia mixed that thing from me seemed to be a grudge against my previous rebuttal. Does being a commoner matter? It seemed that she couldn't stand being told various things by me. A commoner, even though she was in the upper class. She is indeed a woman with high pride. Some time passed and I received another invitation to a high-end restaurant for my in-laws. I went to the restaurant with Ronald. The place was the same restaurant as before. There, my in-laws were already present, and the four of us gathered around the table. My father-in-law tried to order. Then, 2 staff members came over, and I was surprised to see one of them. The staff member was none other than Julia. Why are you guys here? Why are you working here? I have no choice. My father told me to gain experience in customer service and learn about society. Really, even though I, a lady, have to do this. She turned red in the face with anger, and the stern-looking male staff behind her said, Hey, don't keep the customers waiting. Take their orders. Yes, I'm sorry. She was almost in tears as she took the order. Honestly, it was very funny. The dish was delivered, and while we were enjoying its taste, we heard the male staff yelling again. When I looked in the direction of the voice, Julia was crying and apologized to the male staff. It seemed that she was being scolded for making mistakes in orders and behaving rudely to customers. We ate the delicious food while laughing at the sight of her, who had changed so much. My name is Emily, and I'm 29 years old. I've been married to my husband for 2 years, and I've recently become a full-time homemaker after experiencing childbirth for the first time. Despite the struggles I faced due to postpartum, the cuteness of my angelic son makes all my fatigue vanish. I can't help but gush. He has pure, adorable eyes. I bet he'll grow up to be a handsome boy. I'm already head over heels as a proud mother. However, despite my happiness, I have a problem. It's the presence of my mother-in-law, who visits us almost daily. My in-laws live about a 30-minute walk away. My mother-in-law started coming over to support me postpartum as a substitute for my busy husband and my parents who live far away. Although her help would normally be appreciated, she does little to actually assist me. Instead, she just lounges on the sofa, watching her Korean soap opera DVDs that she brings along. She's more of a burden than a help, expecting me to serve her tea and fetch her tissues. She was the one who offered to help, but what is she here for exactly? I have tried telling her, "I'm fine, you can go home," but I ended up getting an earful from my husband later that night. Undoubtedly, my mother-in-law complained to him about being sent away. Even though I asked him to stop because our son was crying, my husband still snapped at me. He's a real mama's boy. I wish I could go back in time and punch my past self for not noticing this before we got married. He insists that I replicate his mother's recipes and even tries to make me dress more like her. No matter what I say, my husband worships his mother as if she's a goddess. However, I continued to discuss the matter with my husband. "We don't need to rely on your mom. It would help so much if you could just help me out a little." "What? I work all day and I'm exhausted. Besides, I bet the baby is happier when you take care of him." Even when I'm talking to him, his eyes are always glued to the TV or his phone, showing no sign of being engaged in the conversation. Does he not care about our son? I'm just as exhausted as he is. With my eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, fatigue, and stress, I glare at him. "Don't you dare complain to my dad. He's also busy and won't tolerate any unnecessary drama." For a moment, he turned his gaze to me, and my husband spoke as if to warn me. My father-in-law is nearing retirement, but still works a lot. I know he is busy. However, it would be a great comfort if he, who treats me like his daughter, could say something to my husband or mother-in-law. As I recall my conversations with my husband, my mother-in-law's inconsiderate voice snaps me back to reality. "Emily, the baby is fussing. Hurry up and soothe him down. It's the fun part of the drama now," she calls, not taking her eyes off of the TV screen. I stop folding the laundry to attend to my son. As I pass the back of my engrossed mother-in-law, I stick my tongue out at her in my mind. Being worn out from children and sleep deprivation, her presence, doing nothing but hanging around, has become a major source of stress for me. However, it has nothing to do with my son. If my husband is not willing to help, then I am the only one left for my son.
Well, I should get going,
She finally says when the clock strikes 5. She quickly gets up from the sofa, uses my dressing table as if it's her own, fixes her makeup perfectly, and goes out into the twilight city. Apparently, she is taking dance classes for her health and to maintain her beauty. From the time we met to discuss our wedding, she would brag, saying,
I used to be a model, so it's a habit for me to stay presentable.
"Thanks to that, people always think I'm younger than I actually am. It's a pain." She is 58, but admittedly, she does look younger than her age. That being said, if she's going to classes this late, she should just go during the day, instead of wasting time at my house.
Grandma doesn't do anything, does she?
As I spoke to my son in my arms, he was soundly asleep, gently breathing. An hour later, the doorbell rang. It was my father-in-law. Having been thoroughly tired of my mother-in-law's behavior for days on end, I ignored my husband's advice and had been secretly discussing the matter with my father-in-law over the phone. My father-in-law wanted to see his grandson's face, so he had made time out of his busy schedule to come and visit us. Looking at my sleeping son, my father-in-law, whose expression was softer than my husband's, chuckled.
He is so adorable.
So, she left in the evening today for her dance class without helping out the house again today? My father-in-law sighed as he looked around the mess in my house. Guessing from his response, it seemed he just found out about his wife attending dance classes. Seeing the state of my house, he must have realized that his wife really hadn't been helping out at all. My father-in-law bowed his head and apologized to me. "It's not your fault," I rushed to say, but he shook his head.
My wife herself said she would support you, Emily. But this, I'll see to it that she doesn't come here from tomorrow. And I understand my son may not be much of a help. But if there's anything you need, let me know anytime."
"Thank you so much," I responded gratefully. It seemed that my father-in-law was also worried about my husband's lack of interest in housework and childcare. For the first time in a long time, I felt the touch of kindness, and it brought tears to my eyes. About 3 months have passed since my father-in-law started visiting us. Thanks to him, my mother-in-law had stopped coming to our house. My mood has been brighter ever since. I never knew I could feel this relieved just by her not coming. My son has even been able to hold up his hand now, and I've been able to spare a little more time for housework. Oh, it's a mess again. I sighed as I spotted the state of my half-open husband's room. Dirty shirts and socks were scattered all over the floor. I threw them in the laundry basket and decided to sweep the floor while I was at it. As I shoved the cleaning tool under the bed, I felt something was off. Did I hit something? As I maneuvered the cleaning tool, a clear file slid out with the bank book inside. "Gosh, he's such a slob," I muttered. I picked up the bank book and set it on my husband's desk, and suddenly my breath hitched. I realized it was not my husband's bank book, but the one we'd set up for our son. Why was our son's bank book in my husband's room when I always kept it somewhere else? Currently, the only money in the account was the generous amount gifted from my parents and my father-in-law for the birth of our son. It was a considerable amount saved for our son's future. A sense of dread crept over me as I tentatively opened the bank book. All the money in it was withdrawn. Out of impulse, I opened my husband's desk drawer and pulled out his bank book. Even though I knew I shouldn't, I couldn't stop myself. "Just as I thought," I muttered, opening my husband's bank book. I found that the entire bonus he'd just received was withdrawn. Moreover, the remaining balance was too low. My mind went blank. Even as I heard my son crying in distance, I was too stunned to rush to him as I usually would. A few hours later, when my husband came back from work, I confronted him. He was initially angry that I had entered his room and looked through his things, but eventually confessed.
I was financially helping my mother.
"What? Why would you need to support your mother? And I can't believe you do something like this without telling me. You even dipped into our child's savings. This is not okay." My husband angrily thumped his desk as I confronted him.
Look, I only help out because my mom said she was struggling, okay? She's probably got problems we know nothing about. Besides, it's my hard-earned money. If you have so many complaints, maybe we should just get a divorce," he grumbled. Our son, who had been gently snoring in his crib, woke up and started crying. My husband argued with me and disturbed our son's sleep. I hurried over to him and lifted him up in my arms. "The money you earned? The money in the account was a generous gift from our parents for our son. You can't claim it. Both your dad and my parents gifted us thinking about our son's future. Don't you feel guilty at all? And I'd appreciate if you would stop mentioning divorce so thoughtlessly," I retorted, watching our son, now cradled in my arms and calming down from his tears. My husband snorted with a look of annoyance. Then he presented a sheet of paper on the desk. It was a divorce paper, and his section was already filled out. I was shocked, and my eyes widened in surprise. I wouldn't mind getting a divorce anytime, to be honest. But you wouldn't want to be struggling financially, burdened with a newborn baby,
he said, seemingly thinking this would shut me up. My feelings started to recede at my husband's childish behavior. That's when I realized something. He had never once held our son. Seeing me silent, my husband laughed, almost as if he was certain of his upper hand.
"So from now on, please pay the living expenses from your own pocket,"
he added nonchalantly, tapping my shoulder before leaving the room. As the living room door closed, I sank to the floor, exhausted. Tears naturally flowed down my cheeks. My son, nestled in my arms, stretched out his little hand to me and giggled innocently. I had made up my mind.
The next day, I submitted the paper he'd handed me to the city hall. Afterwards, I got on an Amtrak train. I left a note saying, "I'll submit the divorce papers and will be claiming alimony and reimbursement for the money you used, along with my wedding ring." I was concerned about taking our newborn baby outside, but he seemed intrigued by the new surroundings and was fortunately in a good mood. I braced myself to take extra care of his health. I was headed to my parents' house in Michigan. I only brought essentials for our son and had a few of my valuables, so I didn't have much luggage. My parents, having been informed the previous night, were ready to welcome us. After hearing my husband and his mother's actions, they were enraged, but they smiled kindly and suggested that I help them with their family business and raise my son here. My parents ran a fruit farm. It was a tough job, but I had helped out since I was a kid and had some experience and knowledge. I began to think that it might not be so bad. The next day, while I was enjoying a rare moment of relaxation, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Reluctantly, I answered the call.
Emily, what the hell is this about?
The moment I put the phone to my ear, a shrill scream pierced through. Somewhat irked, I replied, "Who are you?"
Huh?
Taken aback by my nonchalant response, my mother-in-law stuttered. Feigning recollection, I exaggeratedly said, "Oh, is it you, mother-in-law? I'd completely forgotten about you since I've already divorced your son." My somewhat light-hearted reply seemed to shake her.
Emily, do you realize what you've done? Acting so selfishly.
I assumed my husband had to run to her, not expecting me to really go through with the divorce. It made sense that she was panicked enough to call. Selfish? I think the problem lies with your son, who presented me with a signed divorce agreement as a threat. Though it worked out just fine for me, I responded calmly. She didn't seem to understand.
I'll forgive you for this. Get to married to my son. He's so upset, he's crying right now.
I wondered if he was still by her side. The image of my husband watching me talk on the phone with my mother-in-law, tears welling up in his eyes, sent a chill down my spine. At the same time, I was utterly speechless at his determination to somehow get his mother to intervene.
Enough is enough. I don't need a mama's boy for a husband, or a mother-in-law who spends her night in male strip clubs. Huh?
My mother-in-law choked on her words from the other end of the phone.
How do you know that?
It was clear she reacted to the mention of the gentleman's club. This happened last night. After my husband left the living room, I pulled out my phone. One call was to my parents to tell them I planned on divorce and coming home. The other was to my father-in-law, to whom I owe gratitude and an apology, to explain the situation. That's when my father-in-law revealed everything to me. The reason mother-in-law had been practically living at our house was to visit a male strip club that opened at 6 p.m. There were various reasons she stayed at our place during the day, the first being our house was closer to the club than hers. Plus, by spending her days at our house, she could avoid chores at her own place. She also used me and our son as excuses to get back late. All this worked in my mother-in-law's favor. Apparently, she had taken quite a fancy to one of the dancers at the club and had been spending a lot on him. It was hard to believe that my mother-in-law, who had always been a homemaker, had any money of her own, and she couldn't even drink alcohol because of her low intolerance. She had been withdrawing money from the bank account my father-in-law maintained, buying drinks for the dancers, while sipping sodas herself. My father-in-law had been suspicious of my mother-in-law after I asked about her. Despite being forbidden from coming to our house, my mother-in-law continued to find reasons to go out for a while. Realizing something was off, he followed her and discovered she had been a regular at a strip club. He was deeply shocked to find out about her escapades and the misses of his bank account. To think she'd even take money from her son and grandson. If only I'd found out sooner. I am deeply sorry, Emily. And to my grandson as well. The gravity of my father-in-law's guilt and apologies over the phone, having learned about our situation, was overwhelming. You lied to my husband for money because she didn't have enough to lavish on those entertainers, didn't you? My mother-in-law remained silent at my accusation. I could hear her husband's voice over the phone saying, "Mom, tell me that is all a lie." It seemed he had been listening after all. After a moment of silence, my mother-in-law erupted in anger. "Don't use such vulgar words like lavish. I'm just showing Chris my affection. He loves it when I visit him." Chris must be her favorite dancer's name. I sighed at my mother-in-law's pathetic outburst. The thought of my son's money being spent on her entertainment boiled my blood again. Neither my father-in-law nor I will let this slide. "You better be ready, ma'am." I ended the call and switched off my phone. A few days later, I received a call from my husband who made a sincere apology about the misuse of money and his mother's actions. Regarding the divorce papers, he admitted that it was only on his mother's insistence, saying, "If she bothers you, just show her the divorce papers. She'll stop bothering you." And he wasn't serious about it. He was deeply regretful about being fooled by his mother, who he trusted unconditionally, and eventually driving us to divorce. He seemed to have finally woken up. "I'm truly sorry. I've transferred $20,000 into your account as a token of my remorse, including the misused money and for the inconveniences caused. I hope this shows my sincerity. Let's start over and create a happy family. I need you, Emily, just as much as you need me." His words made my skin crawl. Reconciliation is not an option. I only need my son. From now on, I'll need child support. We can discuss this further with our lawyers. I knew that the $20,000 was the money my father-in-law had lent my husband. It was the money saved for his retirement, separate from the account my mother-in-law had been spending from. From now on, my husband would have to work hard to repay his father and provide child support for our son. He'd also be under his father's surveillance. My husband, who believed I would be forgiving him, was in tears and apologizing. But it was too late. I said goodbye and ended the call and promptly blocked his contact. 2 months have passed since the discussion with my husband, facilitated by our lawyers, was completed. Right now, I'm assisting at my parents' orchard, while also dedicating myself to child rearing. After my divorce from my husband, I've continued to keep in touch with my father-in-law. Sometimes he comes over to see my son. Through conversations with my father-in-law, I learned that my mother-in-law had secretly accrued debt. My father-in-law, who had secretly been preparing for divorce, showed no mercy and kicked my mother-in-law out. Now it seems my ex-husband reluctantly took in his mother, and they're living together. Both my ex-husband and his mother are forced to work to repay the debts and are living under extreme poverty. As I look into my son's innocent eyes, I'm determined to raise him so he doesn't end up like his father or my mother-in-law.
You're not getting any of tonight's pot roast. Here, eat this instead. Here you go. But this is leftover soup and salad from 2 days ago. It might have gone bad, but you can handle it, right? Don't be wasteful. Eat up. I don't want to waste good meat on you. I can't eat this. What was that? Leftovers are perfect for you. Stop complaining and eat up. My mother-in-law always directs such nastiness towards me. She's so obnoxious, it just gets under my skin. My name is Mary, a 27-year-old woman juggling both work and home responsibilities. I got married only a year ago, so I don't have any kids yet. Right now, we're living with my husband's family in their house. I never wanted to live with my in-laws, but since my husband is the eldest son, we didn't have much choice. I thought it was ridiculous to live with my in-laws in this day and age, but both my husband and my mother-in-law hold on to old-fashioned values. Moreover, my father-in-law is no longer with us, and my husband expressed his concern for his mother. I have no idea what he's worried about. She's still so full of life. My brother-in-law is single and working overseas, so I guess that's just how it has to be. But I still hate it. Now, even my husband has started being mean to me, following in his mother's footsteps. He never said anything mean before we got married, but his attitude changed drastically. I feel deceived. He's always acting superior, and he always yells at me. It gives me a headache. Hey you! Why is my shirt so wrinkled? Huh? Is it wrinkled? Yeah, I'll be embarrassed at work like this. Can't you even iron properly? Why can't you do something so simple? No, I did iron it. Your properly is not proper at all. Realize that. What a useless wife you are. That's so mean. You don't have to say it like that. Are you talking back to me? Your face is as wrinkled as this shirt. And you're annoying. Seriously, you look older than you are. It's a turnoff. Oh, really? Before we got married, he used to call me adorable. He treated me like a princess. But now, he insults my appearance and laughs about it. I don't understand why he would say such a thing. I'm not wrinkled or anything. It crossed my mind that he's actually balding for his age. I even found myself wishing that he would go completely bald one day. Our marriage is still pretty new, but I'm concerned about the future. Sometimes the word divorce even flashes through my mind. I was exhausted every day, and once I finished the housework after getting home from work, I felt like I was about to collapse. But my mother-in-law never helped with the chores. She seems to spend her whole day blankly watching TV. There were crumbs from snacks on the floor in front of the TV, and a lot of them. I had to clean them up, and I wish she would at least use a plate. Then, after dinner one day, my mother-in-law started to speak. Hey, let's all go to a spa resort when the new year comes. Oh, that sounds great. All right, I'll make the reservation. I'll get on it first thing tomorrow. Thanks, Mom. My husband and mother-in-law seemed very happy. I didn't really want to go with these people, but I was interested in the spa resort itself. I love visiting spa resorts, and this one was famous enough to be featured on TV recently. I thought it could be a great memory if I could ignore these annoying people. So inside, I was actually excited. After this, my mother-in-law said she had something to discuss. I wondered what it was and headed to the living room. You know, we only have a small car, right? So I was hoping we could borrow your family's minivan. After all, we can load lots of luggage in it. All right, I guess. My father has both a minivan and a small car. He usually commutes in the small car and uses the minivan for shopping trips or camping, which is his hobby. When I called my father, he readily agreed to lend it to us. With that, we welcomed the end of the year vacation. I had to clean the house, so it was again incredibly busy. However, thinking that a spa resort was waiting for me after getting through this year-end period helped me push through. As expected, my mother-in-law wouldn't move from the sofa. She laid there all the time, looking like a statue. Then the morning of New Year's Day arrived. I woke up thinking about the long-awaited spa resort, but was surprised when I looked at the alarm clock. I had overslept. What? It's already 8:30? But David isn't here. Why? My husband, who should have been sleeping next to me, wasn't there either. I thought he might be in the bathroom, but he wasn't. Huh? Where is everyone? Did they go somewhere? I peeked into my mother-in-law's bedroom, but she wasn't there either. I began to wonder if they left without me. In a panic, I checked my smartphone. I always charge my phone in the living room before going to bed. There was a text notification on my smartphone. It was from my mother-in-law. We're going to have fun! We never booked a place for you. You can spend a lonely New Year. It's okay if the bride doesn't come. So my mother-in-law never intended to take me with them from the start. And she planned to enjoy it with my husband. I was really sad. At the same time, I was also very angry. It's terrible to deliberately stop my alarm clock to make me oversleep. And I suspect the reason she made me drink a lot of alcohol the night before was to make me pass out. I regretted drinking that much. Although it's a relief that she didn't drug me, I was irritated about her pushing drinks on me. Well, there's nothing I can do, even if I get angry. So I decided to enjoy myself alone, at home. I really wanted to go home to my parents, but they're also away on a trip by plane, so it's pointless to go back. So I ordered a pizza for delivery that day, and spent a lonely day. Then my mother-in-law and husband returned from their trip. They had broad smiles on their faces. It was so fun! It was the best! I want to stay there again. Of course, without you, Mary. Here, this is a souvenir. What is this? It's a stone I found lying around. It suits you perfectly. Oh, is that so? I couldn't help but think that my mother-in-law was extremely spiteful. Frustrated, I went to return the minivan to my parents' house. I thought they would be home by now. When I arrived at my parents' house, my father came to greet me. Did you enjoy the spa resort? That famous spa should have been quite satisfying. I didn't go because I'm the bride. What? I was told by my mother-in-law that it's fine if the bride doesn't come. I was left behind. When I woke up in the morning, no one was there. What? After that, my father started to do something. Then, he had me sit in the passenger seat of the minivan and started driving. The car was headed back to my in-laws' house. When I glanced at my father's face as he drove, he seemed to be angry. Well, any father would get angry if their daughter was treated that way. But I was taken aback because I had never seen such a look on my usually calm father's face. Then my father stormed into my in-laws' house with something in his hand. My mother-in-law came out. Oh, hello, and Happy New Year! Sorry for borrowing your minivan. Happy New Year. Speaking of which, you left our daughter behind, didn't you? No. Mary said she had a fever and couldn't go, so we had to leave her behind reluctantly. I even offered to take care of her. My mother-in-law was lying through her teeth with a smirk on her face. She definitely never said anything like that, and I wasn't even sick with a cold. I wondered how she could tell such an obvious lie. I thought something must be wrong with her brain. Oh, really? But our daughter said she was left behind. She told us she received a message on text saying, "It's fine if the bride doesn't come." Did I say that? I don't remember. You did. Look at this text. I showed her the text messages. However, she still insisted she was innocent. I was surprised at how thick-skinned she was to still deny it, even cornered this far. In a sense, it was admirable. You're still saying that, huh? You're truly a sad person. Oh, by the way, can I charge you for the cleaning of the car interior? What? Why? Because you dirtied it. With a married man, nonetheless. What a filthy and disgusting scene. What are you talking about? This right here. It was captured by this dual camera. What my father had in his hand was a dash cam. This one has dual cameras, so it can record not only the outside, but also the inside of the car. The advantage of being able to record the inside of the car is that it can provide evidence that you were driving safely. My mother-in-law doesn't know much about car supplies or cars in general, so there's a chance she didn't realize this was a dual camera. But what was she doing with a married man in the first place? I regretted watching the footage that my father played back. After all, there were images of my mother-in-law in an indecent posture and an unknown man. Even though my father-in-law is no longer in this world, it's insane to do such a thing with a married man. And what on earth was she doing in our family car? This was on the exact day you borrowed the car. Ugh, how disgusting. Wait! This doesn't mean we were doing anything dirty. It's not something perverted. My mother-in-law was in a panic, fumbling and stammering on the spot. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was on the brink of crying. I found myself curious and somewhat amused about when she would finally break down. Maybe I'm being cruel, but after all the time she tormented me, she deserves this much. I couldn't be sympathetic or kind to someone like her. Then she began making pathetic excuses. Her reasoning was all over the place. It was clear she was flustered. Yet, she was desperate to defend herself. Suddenly, my father pulled another item from his pocket. It was a photograph. The picture showed my mother-in-law and the man from the video engaged, in a sordid act in broad daylight. It was unthinkable. The background of the picture suggested it took place somewhere secluded, but the audacity to do this in the daytime was still shocking. You wouldn't have seen these if you hadn't been mean to my dear Mary. Why do you have that picture? Because I'm a detective, remember? Oh. Do you recall now? Look, I've been telling you this all along, haven't I? My father is a detective, which explains why he had such a photograph. Coincidentally, the wife of the married man in the picture had hired him for an infidelity investigation. It turns out the wife of this man hired me to investigate her husband's affair. I was surprised to discover you were the other woman. I was going to inform her next week, but I didn't expect to show you this so soon. Huh. No, I'm innocent. I was just forced into an unpleasant situation. I am not at fault. Please, don't tell his wife. It was against your will, was it? You seem to be enjoying yourself. We also have video footage of you whispering sweet words to the man. Do you want to see it? I'm sorry. My mother-in-law collapsed to her knees and burst into tears. I watched her in a pitiful state, with a cold glare. Sensing the unusual situation, my husband arrived. I had run out of patience with him too, and I proposed a divorce. I've had enough. I want to end this. Let's get divorced. What? I'll go crazy if I stay in this horrible family any longer, so I'm leaving. Hold on. What will happen to our living expenses if you leave? Huh? I was fired a while ago. My husband dropped a bombshell. Apparently, he had been fired at the end of the year. I was taken aback as he had not told me this. Despite knowing his job was terminated, he had still decided to go on a spa resort trip. He was a complete fool. I felt I had no choice but to divorce him. I took off my wedding ring and left it there. My husband desperately tried to stop me. Wait, can't you forgive me for not taking you on the spa resort trip? It's not just about the trip. I don't want to be with you or your mother anymore. If you want to live with your mother that much, then go ahead, you mama's boy. Please wait. Don't go. I got a lawyer and proceeded with the divorce. My ex-husband seems to be having trouble managing his living expenses now that I'm gone. I thought he should find a new job quickly, but having been fired from his last job for theft, he'll probably struggle to find a new one. His previous company had fired him because he had been caught stealing. Apparently, they decided they couldn't trust him and didn't need someone like that. Unsurprisingly, the wife of my mother-in-law's lover demanded compensation for the affair. She ended up spending all the money left by my father-in-law to settle the payment. I haven't seen my ex-husband or ex-mother-in-law since, but I imagine they're probably living a hard life. It doesn't matter to me anymore. Currently, I'm living alone and enjoying my work. I made the right decision not to have a child with my ex-husband. Now, I am enjoying a peaceful life and would be happy if I found a new love. If such an opportunity arises, I plan to make sure to choose wisely. Is my mom all settled into our place? Jake questioned, having made the decision to move his mother into our home without even considering my opinion. All the preparations for the move had been thrown onto my shoulders. Yes, she's all settled in. I've just finished sending all my stuff back to my parents' place too, I answered. What? He was clearly taken aback, probably never expecting that I'd move back to my parents' home. After the initial surprise, a snide laugh escaped his nose as he looked down on me. What are you talking about, Ashley? You can't possibly live on your own. Little did Jake know about my determination, how much I've been earning on my own lately. You, spending all day staring at a screen on your phone or computer? You can't possibly manage on your own, Jake sneered. Well, I'd just have to show him, wouldn't I? There's no way I'm turning to him for help anymore. I'll prove that I can survive on my own. My name is Ashley, and I'm 46 years old. I've been married for about 20 years. There are no children between my husband and me. My husband, Jake, an elite banker, has a penchant for fussing over details, whether it's his personality or his profession. He seems to still adore his 56-year-old mother. My mother-in-law lives alone at her house that is a distance from us. My father-in-law passed away 3 years ago. As an only child, Jake has been repeatedly urged by his mother to show her a grandchild soon. However, there was a reason why we couldn't fulfill her wish. The reason is quite simple. Jake said he didn't want a child, even though he always plays the dutiful son to his mother and says, "Yeah, we should have a child soon." Whenever the subject of children comes up, when it's just the two of us, he changes tone, saying, "I said that in front of Mom, but having children is just a hassle. Well, I don't need that." So here we are, at our age, childless. If we decided to have a child now, it would be a high-risk pregnancy. The risks are obvious. So, at some point, we just gave up on having children. Plus, I think somewhere deep down, I didn't want a child with Jake. There were plenty of reasons to feel that way. For instance, when I went to introduce myself before we got married. "Hey, Ashley, I don't think you're a good match for Jake. A banker's wife should be more, this won't last long." She whispered to me so Jake wouldn't hear. But to Jake, she would say sweet words like, "As long as Jake is happy, that's all that matters." It's exhausting dealing with two-faced people like her. It was the same about not having children. "I want to see my grandchild soon. When will you show me?" "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. Ashley says she doesn't want any," Jake would say, blaming it on me. I gradually started to dislike Jake, who put the blame on me when he was the one who said he didn't want children. I don't know if it's because he loves his mother so much, but I wonder if this is what people call a mama's boy. His mother's words are absolute for him, and he won't stand up for his wife, me. "Ashley, why don't you want children?" "She said it's because it seems like a hassle to have them." "Well, you're such a cold person. Jake, are you sure you want to be with this woman?" "It's fine. If I weren't here, Ashley couldn't survive. It can't be helped." "Oh, how kind of you, Jake. Ashley, you need to thank Jake properly." "That's right. Who do you think is supporting you?" Yes, they would laugh at me together. And it wasn't just that. They did the same about my mother. "Ashley is such a terrible person. I bet the person who raised her is even worse." "Yeah, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree." That's absolutely true. Jake is just like his mother. But I couldn't stand them talking ill about my own mother. I should have spoken up at the time, but I was too preoccupied with taking care of my father-in-law. While I was there, I was in charge of caring for him. My father-in-law couldn't do anything on his own. He was suffering from a rare disease where his muscles were gradually stiffening. As a result, my father couldn't manage to eat or eliminate on his own. When I wasn't around, I didn't know if my mother-in-law looked after him or if they had a caretaker visiting. However, knowing my mother-in-law, I bet they had a caretaker. I couldn't imagine her taking care of him herself. If she had a shred of empathy, she wouldn't have left all the care to me alone. Knowing I couldn't voice any objections, Jake started feeding her all sorts of stories about me. I can't stand this anymore. I don't want to continue this marriage. I want to leave. I had every reason to think so. I can't believe I've endured it all until now. Aside from the things I've shared so far, there are so many other things they've put me through, all of them unpleasant memories. Even when my father-in-law died, my mother-in-law was laughing and remarked, "Ah, it's finally over. We don't need to waste our money anymore, and I can relax now." Those aren't the words you use for a husband you've spent years with, especially when she hadn't done anything herself. I was the one who was taking care of him, all alone. Her comment about the money not being wasted probably means she had hired a caretaker after all. It was because of her character that I no longer wanted to be called her daughter-in-law. However, Jake recently spoke to me about her. Apparently, she's showing signs of dementia. When I asked to what extent, he said she started to forget things more often. Upon hearing this, I thought it was probably in the early stages of dementia. I suggested that it might be better for her to move into a nursing home, where professionals could care for her. But Jake sighed in annoyance. "Don't you have any empathy? You live in our house, so you can take care of her here. That's all there is to it." What was he even talking about? I was busy too. "All you do every day is housework. If that's the case, you can take care of my mother." "I'm busy too. Besides, after all she's put me through, do you think I want to take care of her?" "You're such an unpleasant woman. Anyway, my mother will live here. This is final. No objections." It was clear that he had no intention of listening to my opinion in the first place. If that's the case, then I had to adapt to the situation. I simply responded, "Understood," and began preparing for my mother-in-law's move. I went back and forth from my mother-in-law's house to our home, using my car. It wasn't a large car, so it took several trips. The distance from her house to ours was an hour's drive, one way. It was exhausting to rush around and pay for gas on my own, but nobody was there to help me, so I did it all by myself. I could have asked for help from a friend, but I thought Jake, with his high pride, would get angry if he found out. I figured he'd find it embarrassing if people knew that he was making his wife do all the preparations for his mother, with dementia, to move in. So I ruled out the option of asking a friend for help. I suppose I must have been a little out of sorts myself. After a few days of moving my mother-in-law's belongings, I started moving my stuff to my parents' house. They asked what had happened, but I only gave them a brief explanation. My parents consoled me, saying, "You've been through a lot, and you did well." Thanks to my parents' encouragement, I mustered up the courage to go back to our house to finish what was left. My parents told me I didn't have to go back, but I said, "I can't leave things unfinished," and left my parents' house with a smile. When I got home, Jake was already back and was furious to see me coming home at night. "Where have you been? You didn't even prepare dinner." "I'll do it now. It's none of your business where I go." "What kind of talk is that? Who do you think is providing for you?" Jake always gets like this when he's angry. He yells, "Who do you think is providing for you?" As if he thinks that would make me back down. In truth, that was the case in the beginning, so I couldn't say anything against it. But things are different now. Jake doesn't know, but I've been working too. To him, it must just look like I'm staring at my smartphone or computer all day. "So, what do you want to eat?" I asked, ignoring Jake's shouting. This only made him angrier. However, I was no longer willing to cater to his whims. In the past, I would have done anything to appease his anger. I moved as he wanted. I acted as he said. But I was tired of sacrificing for him anymore. "Enough! I can't eat with you. It'll taste terrible. I'll go eat outside." He spat out these words and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. If this had been me from the past, I would have panicked. I would have run out and cried, looking for him. I knew that's what he wanted, but that wasn't me anymore. I thought, if I don't have to prepare dinner, then that's better. I grabbed my car keys to go get some food, but when I opened the door, Jake was there at the entrance. Why didn't you come after me? I sighed deeply, tired of his antics. You were the one who said that a meal with me would be distasteful. That's why I didn't come after you. I explained, frowning, as if to ask, don't you understand? He blurted out some incomprehensible nonsense about how I would usually chase after him. We went inside the house and Jake was still sulking. It was so childish, not fitting for a 56-year-old man. It was frankly disgusting. When I said nothing, Jake, still in a bad mood, started to talk. Did you finish moving my mom? Jake, who had decided on living with his mother without asking me, and had thrown all the preparation onto me. I'm done! I've just finished sending all my stuff to my parents' house. What? He probably didn't think I would actually go back to my parents. He smirked at me, a condescending laugh. What are you saying? You can't live on your own. You're just staring at your phone or computer all day. You can't survive without me. No matter what happens, I won't rely on you. I'll prove that I can live on my own. You may not know it, but I can live by myself. Don't lie! What's the point of telling such an obvious lie? Why do you think it's a lie? Then Jake continued, looking down on me. Listen, you've only been able to live because of me. If I'm not around, you can't survive a single day because you can't earn money. I wondered why he thought I couldn't earn money, but I didn't touch on it and said, even if I explain it here, you won't believe me, but I'll go back to my parents' house anyway. If you're going back to your parents' house, we should divorce. Don't cry and come back later. Do whatever you want. I can see you regretting your divorce in less than 3 days and coming back crying. Fine, that's okay. I've prepared the divorce papers. Please sign here. As Jake signed, sneering with an arrogant smile, I glared at him, grabbed the divorce papers, got in the car, and headed back to my parents' house. Jake seemed surprised that I actually went back to my parents' house. He called me a few times, but I decided to ignore it. However, after about 2 days of silence, since I got back home, the phone calls from Jake started again. I initially did not answer, thinking he might be abusive. But then a voicemail from Jake came in. I decided to listen to it. Ashley, are you angry? I'll forgive you, so come back. That was it. I'll forgive you? He's the one who proposed divorce, and yet he's saying this? If you think about the situation, it's me who should be forgiving Jake, not him. Of course, I would never forgive him. As this unforgiving feeling bubbled up inside me, I decided to answer the next call. However, contrary to this resolution, I didn't hear from Jake for a while. I thought he had given up, but then the phone rang. It was 2 weeks after the day of that voicemail message. Hello? Ashley? When I answered the phone, Jake was sobbing. Wondering why a grown man was crying, I remained silent. Then, from behind him, I heard a weird scream. At the same time, Jake yelled, "Stop it, Mom!" From this, I could easily imagine that her dementia situation had escalated beyond Jake's control. Ashley, it was my fault. Please come back. I don't know what you're talking about. I left. That's why you can come back. I don't want to come back. Please, I can't handle my dementia-stricken mother and work at the same time. You must be in trouble without my money. I'm not in trouble, and I absolutely don't want to. We're a couple, right? Couples help each other. Yes, they do, but we are strangers now. What are you talking about? I'm in such trouble. But when I was miserable, you didn't help me, did you? You were laughing with your mom. Okay, got it. I'll pay. How much do you want? If you look after my mom, I'll pay. You'll come then, right? What do you think I am? Besides, I earn more than you, Jake. What? There was a reason why I had never told him. Jake was the type of person who disapproved of me working. It was when I mentioned that I wanted to do a part-time job. Women should only do housework at home. It's shameful to work outside. People might think I don't earn enough, he raged. So because of Jake's pride, I had to work in secret. I desperately earned money in ways that Jake wouldn't find out. What job were you doing behind my back? Stock trading. A friend taught me. It was a success, and now I've become a professional trader. So don't worry, I can live on my own. Please come back! Why don't you take care of your beloved mother yourself? Besides, you're the one who suggested divorce. You actually filed for divorce? You thought I wouldn't? I went to file it right away. If you have something to say, please do it through a lawyer. At my cold words, Jake kept repeating, I didn't really mean to divorce. Please come back. I said I was busy and hung up, then contacted a friend to introduce me to a lawyer. He agreed to represent me right away, and from then on, all communication was done through the lawyer. It took a bit of time, but I managed to finalize the divorce. And this is what I heard from the lawyer. It seems that my mother-in-law's wandering habit has worsened. She often sneaks out in the middle of the night and dines and dashes at convenience stores. She's been banned from countless places. Not only that, but when she's at home, she smears filth on the walls and eats things she definitely shouldn't, causing a big mess. On top of that, because of her shrill screams, complaints and reports from the neighbors never cease, and the police often visit. Despite the situation, Jake didn't resort to day services because of his ridiculous pride, saying, People might think I'm a bad son if I leave my mother to a day service. It's shameful. It's not something a capable man like me should do. It could all be resolved if Ashley just came back. I heard that Jake, who used to rely on me and push everything onto me, is now a complete mess, incomparable to those days. He's thin, with hollow eyes, possibly from lack of sleep, and his appearance has become so ghost-like that it's even a topic of conversation in the neighborhood. When I heard that, I thought, it serves him right, but I didn't say it out loud and just thanked the lawyer. As for me, I've moved to the top floor of a tower apartment with my parents. Jake had always belittled my parents, but now I'm really glad I could live in a nice place with them. Finally free, I'm spending very happy days looking at the beautiful scenery every day.
Why the hell are you thinking of ditching your daughter's wedding celebration?
The angry yell of a young woman can be heard over the phone. I did indeed receive the wedding invitation 3 months ago, but I thought I properly sent back not attending. Yet the woman is fuming, claiming that because I bailed at the last minute, the ceremony was ruined, and I should take responsibility. Confused, I repeatedly explained that I had told my absence. However, the woman's response was something I did not anticipate at all. My name is Alicia. I have a childhood friend named Mike who lived next door, and our families have been close since we were kids. Mike, 2 years older than me, moved away for college and after graduating got a job at a big company in New York. I went to a local college and got a job at a small local company. Soon after, Mike got married to a college classmate, and I attended the wedding as a friend of Mike's. 3 years into their marriage, they had a daughter. Their daughter's name is Bella. They sent me pictures and videos, and Bella was very cute. Mike has good features, so I thought Bella took after him. Their noses were very similar, and Mike seemed to adore Bella to the point of spoiling her. His wife seemed to be a kind person, and Mike seemed to be living a happy life. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but 2 years after Bella's birth, Mike surprisingly divorced his wife and came back home with Bella. The reason for the divorce was his wife's infidelity. Apparently, she had been having an affair with her ex-boyfriend for about a year, and Mike could not forgive her. He obtained custody of Bella and returned home. Alicia, it's been a while. I still can't believe my wife was cheating. I went to see Mike after he returned home, but he had lost weight due to the shock of the divorce and was extremely depressed. He couldn't get over it, calling his ex-wife a lowlife for cheating and expressing resentment towards her. Even though he was doing his best as a father, Bella, still only 2 years old, was missing her mother and crying a lot. Worried about Mike and Bella, my family visited them regularly, provided emotional support to Mike, and helped take care of Bella. Over time, Mike gradually regained his spirits. Around the time Bella started kindergarten, she started calling me Mom. Because I saw Bella frequently and often looked after her, she became very attached to me. People around me said Bella needed a mother, and since I hadn't had a boyfriend in a long time, I decided to marry Mike for Bella's sake. I didn't have romantic feelings for Mike, but our parents were good friends, and with strong persuasion from those around me, I felt more swept up into the marriage. Still, once I decided to get married, I made a strong vow to take care of Mike and Bella with all of my heart. We rented a condo a little away from our parents' homes and started our new life as a family of 3. I had been working hard as a full-time employee at a local company, but I quit my job to dedicate myself to childcare, as Mike wished, and became a stay-at-home mom. With support from both families, Bella grew up healthy and vigorous. We had our share of difficulties, but the 3 of us were living happily. However, when Bella was in 5th grade, Mike had to resign from the major company he had been working for. He was forced to take the blame for a problem caused by his boss at the company. Even though he pleaded innocent, his boss's influence was powerful, and it seemed that nobody wanted to help him for fear of getting involved. After quitting his job, Mike, who was an excellent worker, was able to find a new job at a small local business in his hometown right away. But his salary was drastically reduced. When the family's finances tightened and we couldn't afford the rent for our current apartment anymore, we decided to move to a cheaper, older, and smaller one. I begged to return to my previous company and started working desperately to earn Bella's tuition. Our parents offered to help, but they were both living on their pensions and barely scraping by every month. Their house is small and there's no room for us to live together, so we can only accept their good intentions. I tried my best to manage our family budget frugally so that the 3 of us could live healthily. But Bella, who knew our previous carefree life, could not accept the gap between that and our current reality and began to take it out on me. "If only Mom could earn more money," she said. And unbelievably, Mike sided with Bella. I couldn't hold back my anger because if Mike hadn't been fired in the first place, we wouldn't have to live such a hard life, and it led to a big fight. Perhaps because of such a marital life, Mike had an affair. Bella was now in her sophomore year of high school, just old enough to choose which parent to live with, but still needing a guardian. Comparing to his previous job at a large company, Mike's salary had been extremely reduced, but it was still higher than mine. Thinking about Bella's future, I thought it would be best to leave it to Mike. When I consulted with her, Bella herself, returning from school, said she would go with her father. "I live with Dad and my new mom. My new mom is unlike you. She is a rich lady. Plus, she started her own company and is popular as the beautiful CEO everyone's talking about. Being with you is just poverty-stricken and you're a stranger without a blood tie, right? It's okay to live miserably alone in the shabby apartment forever, isn't it?" Bella was already calling Mike's mistress Mom. I was speechless at Bella's unbelievable insults and calling me you. Just then, Mike came home with his mistress. True to the name of the beautiful CEO everyone's talking about, the mistress, who introduced herself as Kathy, was a very beautiful woman. Kathy threw a wad of bills in front of me without even a greeting, a smug smile on her face. "Here's the compensation for the affair. It's $80,000 in total for me and Mike. If you want it, I'll be generous and give it to you, so pick it up." In my anger, I wanted to throw it back at her, but I took a deep breath and picked up the bills. Then Mike and Bella pointed at me and laughed rudely, saying I was vulgar and poor. Kathy, with a triumphant look on her face, said, "So we've settled. All you need to do is write a divorce paper right away and never show up in front of us again. We've even paid the compensation, so don't bother us with a lawsuit later." With that, the 3 of them left, laughing at me. I clenched the wad of bills tightly. I wanted to retort, and I felt like slapping all 3 of them in the face. However, considering it as alimony for 2 people, $80,000 was higher than the going rate. I realized that I wouldn't be able to win that amount even if I took it to court, so I decided to use the money to start my life anew. And so, 8 years later, I had forgotten about Mike and Bella completely while living a busy life. One day, out of the blue, my parents told me that an invitation to a wedding had arrived at their home. Apparently, it was addressed to me from Bella. When I looked at the actual invitation, the part that said unable to attend had been crossed out, and attending was already circled. My parents said that it had been that way from the beginning, and feeling a bit creeped out, I rewrote unable to attend and mailed it back. I could have ignored it, but I thought it would be a hassle for the venue if the number of guests wasn't settled. 3 months later, during work, a colleague told me that a woman claiming to be my daughter was on the line for me. Could it be Bella? When I picked up the phone, Bella on the other end was so furious that she started yelling at me as soon as I took her off hold.
How could you ditch my wedding, Mom?
I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear due to her loud, angry voice. Even then, Bella continued to yell.
My wedding is ruined because of you.
Listen, I don't have a daughter. Can you stop calling me?
Huh? What are you talking about, Mom? We're family, right?
Forgetting all about what happened 8 years ago, Bella laughed in a high-pitched voice. When I responded with a deep sigh, she started asking for money.
Hey, Mom, your company is doing pretty well right now, isn't it? So you must be making a good salary. I'm struggling financially because my husband is asking for alimony. You'll help me out, right? Because your daughter's in trouble?
Like I said, I don't have a daughter. If you're having trouble with money, you should talk to your rich and beautiful mom. When I responded like that, Bella started going on and on about how hard her life is now. It all started with a magazine. Kathy, who married Mike, apparently regularly purchases a famous trade magazine in her industry to see how her company is perceived by the public. Then she's noticed that a company had overtaken hers, which until then had been the talk of the town. It was the company I worked for. After my divorce from Mike, I worked tirelessly to forget about my married life. When the CEO said, "You know what social media is? Give it a try," I became the PR person and started being proactive on social media and gaining media exposure. Our company, which had been conducting business honestly in our local area, saw a boost in recognition and sales began to rise. We started to actively hire locals and even started to attract excellent talent from other companies. As a result, sales went up, which attracted more people, and we started to create better products, and we found ourselves in a very good situation. This seemed to be a huge blow to Kathy, and she seemed desperate to surpass our company. However, it wasn't a clever strategy to boost their own sales, but rather by bad-mouthing me to their clients, saying, "A company that hires such a woman can't be good," as a means to pull us down. The staff were shocked that the competent CEO suddenly became emotional and started to meddle in the management with personal feelings. It seemed that many people who voiced their opinions were either demoted or fired. As a result, talented people started to leave Kathy's company, and it was also suspected and avoided by other companies. Before we knew it, a big gap had opened up between her company and ours. Unable to acknowledge this, Kathy began to lash out at Mike and Bella, and it seemed that Bella and the others did not see any value in Kathy, who was not wealthy. At home, it seemed that they were living a life where angry voices were constantly resounding. Unable to bear such days, Mike and Bella would find people who work at the same company as me and say, "I want to start over with Alicia, but Kathy is getting in the way," apparently crying. But most of the employees of the company are locals, and among the new hires there are also people who got fired from Kathy's company. Naturally, everyone knew about my relationship with Mike, so they were not treated by anyone as a shameless parent and child. Despite this, the two of them who wanted to get close to me again by any means thought if they invited me to Bella's wedding, I would not be able to decline, so they sent an invitation. Even if I returned it as an absence, they would treat me as present and advertise me widely to the guests. However, on the day of the wedding, I was absent. Moreover, because Bella disliked Kathy sitting in my mother's seat, they ended up having a big fight in the wedding venue, despite it being a place for celebration. Eventually, the disgusted guests left and Bella was served with divorce papers from the groom, who saw her true nature.
"Mom, come back home soon. Your company is money, right? I'll kick that woman out next time. Let's live together as three again."
I'm in trouble if I'm blamed for not going as planned, involving people arbitrarily. Every time Bella calls me mom, I, who get a headache, repeatedly say, "We're not parent and child anymore, so stop contacting me," and I hang up. But since they keep calling over and over again, I consulted my boss and registered not only Bella's but also Mike's phone number as a nuisance call to the company. Perhaps they didn't have the leeway to call from a different number. I was able to have peace during working hours. When my work was over and I was on my way home, Bella, Mike, and Kathy were all waiting together. Bella, as always, accusing me of being heartless, Mike repeating his demands to get back together. Kathy was shouting at me to pay her money because I was breaking the promise of settlement by getting involved with Mike and the others. Hey Bella, if you're struggling with money, wouldn't it be solved if your dad found a new rich mom? And Mike, you're the one who left with the other woman, so if you ask for a reconciliation with your ex-wife, me, it looks like you're a man who was also dumped by your current wife. Is that okay with you? Both Mike and Bella, who had been so nosy, quietly closed their mouths. Finally, I looked at Kathy and smiled. I've kept my promise to you. I haven't contacted these folks on my own. It's not me who's bad here. Isn't it these two trying to ditch you and sneakily getting in touch with me? I quickly turned and headed back to the office. Behind me, the sound of 3 people hurling insults at each other echoed. With those people in my peripheral vision, I reported to the police that a squabbling family was on the brink of physical altercation. On the way home via a different route, I also contacted my parents' house to inform them that the actions of the 3 were becoming more intense. It just so happened, Mike's parents were also at home and responded with a reassuring, "If they show their faces, we'll give them a good beating." I asked them, please don't hit them, just keep the doors locked and avoid meeting them, before ending the call. When I went to work the next day, many people asked if I was okay. Apparently, after I left, the 3 really got into a brawl, and many police officers had to rush over in their patrol cars. Even with the arrival of the police, the trio remained agitated and didn't care about the attention they were garnering. Eventually, they were each put in a patrol car and reasoned with, but given it was rush hour, many people ended up witnessing the scene. Among them were Kathy's company employees and partners, resulted in several deals being called off. Kathy, a headstrong businesswoman who was so engrossed in her resentment towards me that she neglected her business, ended up bankrupt. Being a wealthy heiress, she seemed to have sought her parents' help, but was apparently told to take her responsibility for her actions and left to fend for herself. While Kathy was sorting out her business, Mike quickly took Bella and got divorced. After the divorce, Mike and his family returned to their in-laws, where, true to their word, Mike's parents gave them a piece of their mind and severed ties, telling them never to show their faces again. Since the people around our parents' home knew us well, they felt uncomfortable and quickly moved to a different town. He was dismissed after a string of unauthorized absences, having run off without even submitting a resignation notice. Bella seems to be working at her job, but is struggling to repay the wedding costs that were demanded by the groom she had left high and dry. All 3 of them came to my workplace, but my understanding bosses and colleagues protected me, and my subordinates quickly reported them. The persistent trio eventually gave up when a hefty male security guard was placed at the company's reception, finally bringing the situation under control. Since then, I've been living my life devoted to my work so as not to remember those 3. Thanks to the competent personnel from Kathy's company coming for job interviews, our boss is over the moon. I'm making a conscious effort to live each day without letting money get to my head and changing my attitude or abusing others.
My name is Erica, and I work in the architecture field for a major home builder. From my student days, I had always decided I would master this job. The reason being my father, who passed away in an accident soon after I started middle school. He was a certified architect, and it seems like his dream was to establish his ideal company. Unfortunately, he passed away without fulfilling that dream. I'll fulfill my father's dream on his behalf. Since then, I've lived with a purpose. I too am now married and live with my husband, Philip. We don't have children. I knew that if I had children, I wouldn't be able to work as I have been doing so far, because I love my job so much. As a condition for marriage, I had Philip understand that I did not want children for now. Erica, good job today. Do you have time after today's meeting? What's up? I have some things I'd like to discuss. How about going out for drinks occasionally? If that's the case, I have a good wine at home. How about a mini home party? That sounds great. I'd love to go. Well then, let's finish the meeting and go shopping. And let's take off early for a change. Yay! As promised, I finished my work early that day and returned to my apartment with my most cherished junior colleague, Darcy. We had prepared some quick-to-make dishes and deli foods that we had bought from the supermarket, neatly served them on plates, and started drinking. Although we had gone out for drinks and meals together many times before, this was the first time I had invited her to my home. Being at home, we drank without any reservations. Since it's a day off tomorrow, why don't you stay over tonight? But your husband will be coming home, right? That would be too presumptuous. I'll go back by the last train. He'll be back soon, but it's no problem. While we were having this conversation, my husband came home. I'm back. Oh, do we have a guest? Welcome back. It's my colleague Darcy from the company. We're having a mini home party today. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm sorry to intrude. Erica always takes care of me. No problem at all. Can I join in too? Sure, I'll get a glass for you. So we ended up drinking as a group of 3. I had no idea that this would lead to chaos in my life. Having just finished a big project and working overtime for days on end, I was exhausted and ended up falling asleep on the sofa, leaving the 2 of them behind. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I vaguely saw the 2 of them having a good time in the distance. I thought they were still drinking, but I fell back asleep. When I woke up the next day, Darcy was nowhere to be seen. Good morning. You slept well. It's already noon, haha. What? I slept that long. Where's Darcy? Darcy? I dropped her off at the station this morning. She's a kind junior, saying it's okay not to wake you up since you're tired. I'm sorry. Did you stay up late last night? No, we didn't drink that late. At that time, I felt something off about my husband's words, but I didn't press the issue. I'm sure it was the middle of the night when I woke up once. I think the 2 of them were having a good time drinking late into the night, but I didn't say anything at the time about why my husband was hiding that, or if he was being considerate towards me. Then about 3 months passed, and I invited Darcy to drink at my house again. I've been feeling a bit under the weather lately, so I've decided to lay off the alcohol for a bit. Oh, what's wrong? Are you feeling ill? It's nothing serious, really. I guess I might have overdone it with the drinking recently, haha. Well, if you ever need to talk about anything, don't hesitate. Besides, my husband would be thrilled if you came over more often. Ah, sure. A few weeks passed after this conversation when, one day after finishing my overtime, I came home to find my husband and Darcy there. Oh, what's up? Did you guys come to hang out? But something seems off. Erica, could you sit down? What? Well, actually, on that day we drank together, after you went to bed, it was just Darcy and I left. We had a lot to talk about, and that's when we started to keep in touch. I see. We've met a few times since then without telling you. Oh, really? Why didn't you tell me? Was there a reason you couldn't? I'm really sorry, Erica. Darcy and I are dating. What? I'm sorry. She's pregnant. It's my child. Erica, can we break up? What? Darcy's the junior colleague that I've been mentoring, right? I understand that, and I'm truly sorry. Next to Philip, Darcy just cried. In such a situation, you'd think that anyone would be seriously shaken up. But at that moment, I was calm and collected. I guess for my husband, a woman who always prioritizes her work over anything else is boring. While the affair was a problem, the fact that I was cheated on didn't impact me too much. I'm fine with a divorce. You don't have to pay me anything. But since Darcy is pregnant, this could be a good opportunity. I want her to quit her job. I don't think I can handle taking care of a junior colleague who's pregnant with my husband's child. Erica! Darcy, there's no point in crying. I should be the one crying here because I was betrayed by my husband and my junior colleague. But if you cry like that, I can't cry. I managed to handle the situation like a perfect student till the end. I know I can live alone, and my husband must have wanted a child early on. So this is good. That was my honest answer at that time.
Erica, thank you so much. I appreciate the amicable divorce.
Normally, such matters turn into a big hassle. The fact that Philip and Darcy were grateful to me was just because I accepted the situation without much fuss. But I could never forget how frustrated I felt at that moment. After our divorce, they got married and became a family. I have a goal in life. For that, I wanted to believe that this was the right choice for me. After a while of being divorced, I got a call from my senior who had taken care of me during my college days. He is 2 years older than me and had the same ambitions as I did, so we had several times during various exams and got along well. He got a job at a major company, different from mine, before me. We used to keep in touch occasionally, but after getting a job and getting married, we naturally lost contact.
Erica, it's been a while. I heard rumors about the career-driven woman getting divorced, and I thought it would be a good time to boldly invite you for dinner. Would you be able to make time?
I would have been thrilled to get a dinner from you, Andrew, even if I was married.
That wouldn't be appropriate. It would be disrespectful to your husband, so I couldn't invite you.
Andrew, you're always so composed. I'm free today, actually.
Great, let's do it today then.
It's the first time I'm going out for a meal with someone since my divorce. Since that time, I hadn't thought much beyond my work. But now, the prospect of dinner with Andrew had me feeling a bit excited about something beyond work. The hours of the day quickly passed, and I finished work a bit earlier than the time we had agreed on. After freshening up, I headed to the meeting place. True to his word, Andrew arrived at the restaurant right on time. Long time no see.
Indeed, Erica. I've heard about all your accomplishments. Have you been well?
I was busy with a divorce and all, but that's settled now. I'm thinking of making plans for my work in the future.
That must have been tough. Are you okay now?
I think my ex has remarried and is living peacefully. As for me, I've moved and sorted things out, so I'm enjoying living alone now, haha.
Must have been hard. I've been alone all this time, so no changes for me, haha.
How about your work? I've been following your accomplishments too, Andrew.
Actually, the reason I invited you today is to talk about work. When I heard about your divorce, I thought this is the right time.
What do you mean?
Erica, would you like to build a company you've always dreamed of with me?
Me? With you, Andrew?
I've always thought, if I were to go independent, I'll do it with Erica. But after your marriage, I was indecisive and just passing time at the current company.
I had no idea you thought of me like that, Andrew.
I know you've always had a clear vision of your future, Erica. I won't push you if it means getting in your way, but if I can make your journey smoother, if I can be of help, I want to start a business together. Is that unacceptable?
Thank you. Can I take some time to think about it? But please know, I'm considering it positively.
I understand. Let's keep this conversation for another time and enjoy today. Let's eat and drink.
Sure. I had never considered starting a business with someone else. Would it be right to involve others in fulfilling this simple childhood dream of making my father's dream come true? I've always admired Andrew. He's reliable, and above all, he has a track record and connections. If I were to start a company with someone, he would be the best partner. That day, we had a really good time, reminiscing about the old days and spent late into the night. From that day on, Andrew and I started going out for meals frequently. Around this time, I found myself enjoying the time I spent with Andrew, regardless of work. I was looking forward to meeting him again, and a different feeling was budding within me. Perhaps if I had felt this way towards Philip, we might not have divorced. And then I made a big decision. I will bring closure to my past with Andrew and look towards the future. I made up my mind. Today, I'm going to meet Andrew. Andrew, sorry for showing up out of the blue today.
If it's all you're out of the blue, Erica, I'm used to it by now. No problem at all.
Right, I have something important to discuss today.
Huh? Yes.
Andrew, I have failed once before, but would you consider being with me with the intention of marriage?
Huh? What?
I'm sorry for dropping this on you so suddenly.
No, I thought we were going to talk about work, so I was taken aback. I'll give you the answer straight away. Forget about any preconditions. Let's get married.
What?
I've liked you since college, Erica. I have no reason to turn down a confession from you.
Did I take the long way around?
You disappeared completely once I got a job. I thought you'd get married without telling me.
I thought I shouldn't get in the way of you, Andrew. Now a working adult.
That's just like you, Erica. But I'm already satisfied with being able to reunite like this.
From that moment, we started our relationship. Having reconnected with him, a familiar face from long ago, I fell in love with him. I had been hung up on realizing my father's dream with someone else, but if my partner in marriage is the one to do it with me, I'm sure my father won't mind. While preparing for our marriage and setting up our company, we clearly defined our work-life balance and fully enjoyed the limited time we had as lovers. We maintained our relationship with our current companies while preparing to resign. At the same time, we designed and built our new home with an office on the first floor and our living space on the second and third floors. My new life, which began with divorce, was about to take on a major challenge, resigning from our companies. Believing we can get through anything together, still we only have positive feelings. There is one more thing that I even find surprising. I told him I wanted a child. I had never felt this way before. At any rate, we were happy. Then, construction of our new home finished without a hitch, and our new life truly began. Thanks to our mutual preparation time, our business made a smooth start, and it became a topic of conversation in the industry. Then, one day, I got a call from Philip. Philip, what's up?
Erica, can we meet sometime soon?
Is something wrong?
I have something I want to consult you about.
Just hold on a moment. I put Philip on hold, told Andrew, who was working at his desk, and asked if I could go. Andrew said it was fine. We've just started our company and are busy. Would you mind coming to our office? I asked him. Philip seemed surprised.
In that case, I'll bring Darcy and our child,
he said. I gave him the address and hung up. Seeing you, Andrew, such a wonderful person, and our stylish office that we designed together. I bet my ex-husband, who dumped me for an affair, doesn't think I'm living unhappily.
We're clearly happy to anyone who sees us. Don't worry.
Then Philip and Darcy came to visit our office. From what I could see, Darcy had lost all of her previous sparkle, looking plain and devoid of any cheer in her expression.
Excuse us for intruding. Erica, it's been a while. Sorry for bothering you while you're busy.
Go ahead and take a seat.
This office is so impressive. You've really achieved your dream. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm just getting started.
Here's some tea.
My husband and I designed this place together and started our company.
Nice to meet you. I'm working over there, so take your time. Sorry for showing up uninvited.
So, what's up? Darcy looks different. Something's not going well?
Well, I lost my job due to restructuring right after you and I divorced. What? I started looking for a job immediately, but I couldn't find anything. In the meantime, we had a baby. I wanted to be there for them, so I took some flexible part-time work. But I can't keep going like this forever.
Why are you asking me?
I was hoping you might be able to help me find a job.
Ah, I see.
Even if I can't get a job, maybe you could talk to Darcy's old company about taking her back.
Just when I was at a loss for words, Andrew came in.
Sorry for interrupting, but isn't it wrong to ask her for that? What? It's not my place to say, but she's my wife. I'd appreciate it if you didn't disrespect her. Considering why you two showed up, why did you come here? Don't you feel embarrassed? It's disgraceful.
Let's just leave. Darcy, if you're proud of the work you did at the company, why don't you contact them yourself? I always thought you were an excellent colleague. Have some confidence. Erica, don't look so down. It's not good for the baby to see Mom upset.
You did the right thing by divorcing me. You found a good guy and moved on quickly.
How dare you say that?
But isn't it true? Maybe you even planned it all, bringing Darcy that day. Maybe you wanted us to meet, hoping we'd end up like this, haha.
That's awful. Just leave.
Yes, please leave. She's not that kind of person. And it was me who reached out after so long. It's not like she contacted me because of the divorce. Really? But living with him, all he thinks about is work. It can't be fun, can it? We see work as work. We make sure to go out on dates every week, and we enjoy our time together. I guess it wasn't like that when you were married. But in the end, she's all about work. She says she doesn't want kids, so you can't fully become a family. I see. She told me that she wants to have children once the business settles down. We're planning to expand our family. That's why we moved the office downstairs, to make it easier for her to work. Darcy, let's go.
Okay.
Erica, you're better off without me. Be happy.
Philip, you need to get it together. Take good care of Darcy. That day, I showed my ex-husband how successful I had become since our divorce. I don't know what happened to him after that, but I hope that he used that day as a fresh start, and things have been going well for him. A year later, we were blessed with a baby. I worked hard during my pregnancy, but for now, I'm leaving the business to my husband and focusing on raising our child. I am truly happy. I'm sure my father would be pleased too, from afar.